I thought of making 3 separate videos about this, but nah, I'm just gonna do all 3 at once. We have here Your Name, Weathering with You, and Suzume. All 3 directed, written by Makoto Shinkai Makoto, and they're all very much part of his disaster trilogy. If the people watched Weathering with You and thought it was the exact same movie as Your Name, they would be correct, because that was the intent, to make all 3 of these movies similar to each other, being a star-crossed romance lover story with a supernatural disaster backdrop. This one being about a meteor crashing into a small town, and we have time travel loops where 2 people who end up falling in love end up swapping bodies every other day, and eventually one of them, who's from the future, has to go back into the past through her body to try to impact the past and avert a catastrophe and save the life of the person he actually is swapping bodies with. Ironically, this is a time loopy-loop type of story where she ends up going to Tokyo to find, I think his name is Taki, going to Tokyo to find Taki, and, because it's time travel shenanigans. They've been swapping bodies already for quite a while by the time she goes to try to find him, but by the time she finds him, it's 3 years in the past for him, so he remembers meeting her 3 years ago, but it's time travel body swap. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know the spiritual aspects of it, but I do find it fascinating. I found it absolutely fascinating, and of course, all 3 of these movies are absolutely beautiful to look at. However, I did not see Your Name first. I saw Weathering with You first, and it was a beautiful movie, and I think it probably might even be better than Your Name in most places. Your Name, especially the English dub version, I'm basing all 3 of these off the English dub version. When I look at both of these 2 side by side, this one feels a little bit more over dramatic in the English version, with a lot of the music video montages splitting in between and all that stuff. There's not as much of that in Weathering with You, where they do put the music montage segments in. It does feel a lot better. There's a segment with a bike in Weathering with You that's absolutely beautiful. The rain looks absolutely beautiful. The animation Weathering with You is just a step upwards in almost every way from Your Name, at least in my opinion. Although I would probably agree that the romance between these 2 feels a little bit more real compared to this. The romance in Your Name is the best out of all 3 of these. We'll talk about Suzume. In Weathering with You, it's not time travel, luckily. These 2 are both living in the same time period, and they live in the same location. They're not swapping bodies with each other, they just happen to meet each other. This chick happens to be a sort of shaman priestess lady who can make the rain stop in Tokyo. And so she makes the rain stop, and they start a small business about that, because he's a runaway, and she's basically an orphan because her mother recently passed away, and she's taking care of her younger brother. Both of them are under the age of 18, so they can't really be doing this on their own legally. So they have to do all of this stuff below board. They have to be paid in cash. They can't really do a lot of above board stuff. But hey, it's a pretty decent story. You don't have to learn about I forget his name's home life, but you could tell that he really does not want to go back home. He ran away from home, and there's a scene in a burger joint where she was working at as a burger cafe lady, and she gives him a sandwich, and he eats the sandwich, and he says, "This is the best meal I've ever tasted in my whole life." And that moment right away should tell you that what kind of home life this kid is used to. So it doesn't need to tell you anything more than that to realize that, yeah, you agree with him. You don't want him going back home. And it's a pretty decent story. I really liked the story aspect here, although the romancy, these two characters are just more likable. They're more likable. That's what I want to say. They're likable. These two characters are definitely likable as well. They're just not as likable as these two characters. But it's still a beautiful movie. It is wonderful to watch. The rain is stunning. The animation, the backgrounds, the backdrops, the locations, the sets, the design of everything looks like it's ripped out of the real world and put into the animation. It is incredible to look at. Which brings us, of course, to the third and most recent of Makoto Shinkai's disaster trilogy, Suzume. And this is the reason why I wanted to make this video. Suzume is a very interesting story. It's a road trip story. It's not like Your Name and Weathering with You. It's not doing the exact same story. It's doing a different story. The previous two movies generally tended to put you behind the point of view of the male protagonist. In this case, we are in the point of view of the female protagonist, Suzume. The name's named after her. And we meet, I forget his name, Haru, maybe, I don't know. I'm not good with names, of course I'm not. And it revolves around doors. And right away, this movie, this concept, the animations of a lot of these characters, the little chair here which comes to life, a lot of this speaks to Miyazaki. And I'm not surprised in the slightest that Shinkai Makoto is a fan of Miyazaki. Anybody who is an animation big guy is probably a fan of Miyazaki. Miyazaki is like one of the godfathers of animation. He is incredible. And of course, his most recent film, The Boy and the Heron, is incredible as well. It is an amazing, fantastic movie. Is Suzume on that level? It's not on the level of The Boy and the Heron, no. But it does give me vibes of a Miyazaki film. It gives me a lot of vibes of Spirited Away. It gives me a lot of vibes of that type of story where somebody gets uprooted from their home life. It's kind of a boring home life, maybe. And they go off on an adventure for a little road trip. They meet a male hero who's pretty cool and all that stuff, but the hero gets cursed, and so she feels responsible for that. So she goes off on an adventure to try to uncursify him. And during the road trip, she falls in love with the male guy, and then at the end, the male guy gets his body back. The curse is broken, and it's just beautiful to look at as well. The story isn't as memorable, admittedly, as Your Name and Weathering with You, although I don't care. It's a fantastic film. At any rate, if it's just a little bit more forgettable than the other two, then that just gives me a reason to rewatch it every now and again, because I may have forgotten what happens in it. I'll watch it again and love it again. It is beautiful to look at. It's just that's just the normal mainstay by this point. If we say a Makoto Shinkai Makoto movie is coming out, it's gonna be beautiful to look at. It's just an expected thing at this point. Suzume is just expected to be beautiful to look at, and it is. This one just feels like the most Miyazaki of the trilogy of disaster films, and as a result, I do like it more than Weathering with You, and I do like it more than Your Name. I like it the most out of this trilogy of films, even though the romance doesn't exactly feel believable, because she falls in love with him over like a 2-day period, and he's kind of like 5 to 6 years older than her, and she's 17, and it's just, well, it's Japan, but it's still... it's still a fun time. If you stop thinking about all that stuff, it's still a fun time. I recommend all three of them. I recommend watching all three of them. Maybe not back to back, but maybe I definitely recommend giving all three of them a watch.